Well, let me introduce my panel to you this evening. Let's start with G. Parthasarthi, former High Commissioner to Pakistan, joining us in the Delhi studio. Jaydev Ranade, former Additional Secretary Raw, also with us here. Thank you so much for your time. GVL Narasimha Rao, spokesperson of the BJP, and I'm told that we've also now got that link crossed to Manishankar Iyer of the Congress. Thanks all so much for taking our time to be here. But first, I spoke earlier with Gopal Gandhi, former governor of West Bengal. He's, of course, written to the President of Pakistan today on this, urging him to stop that sentence from going ahead. I asked him on that letter that he's written and, of course, what he is hoping it will achieve, and if he's hopeful it will achieve the purpose.
I'm hopeful that conversations between those who are against the death penalty in India and the death penalty in Pakistan, they will have some impact on the President of Pakistan, on the establishment in Pakistan. I believe there are people who are against the death penalty in both countries and who are against capital punishment as such. But I also think that the populations of the two countries, the people of the two countries, have this much sense that to execute a single human being who happens to belong to India in this charged political tension between the two countries would be an act of proxy war. It will not be about crime and punishment. Kulbhushan Yadav personifies the tensions between the two countries. The political and military crises between the two countries have suddenly taken the shape of this one human being, and he happens to be in the physical custody of Pakistan. And the way Pakistan handles him can make all the difference. If the President of Pakistan, who I trust, I do not speak from knowledge, but I speak from inference. If the President of Pakistan has the powers to grant pardon, or as they say, grant clemency, and annul the orders of the military court, then a huge difference will be made in the psychological situation today between the two countries. On the other hand, if he does not, and the hanging takes place or the execution takes place, there will be, I think, an irreversible setback in the relations between the two countries. But quite apart from this, I think it is important that the right to life, the fundamental right of a human being to live, be respected. This is at the base of all narratives on the death penalty. And this particular point, this principle, is at stake. And it is at stake in the form and person of Kulbhushan Yadav.
Right. You, of course, said that you're writing this in the interest of insaniyat or humanity. Now, given the way Pakistan's gone about violating widely accepted rules of law and diplomacy, it's all been conducted in complete secrecy, and that too at the highest levels. What sort of pressure or persuasion do you believe will force them to roll back now?
The chances of a rollback should never be ruled out by those who believe that the rule of law can prevail. To say that there is no hope when the person is still alive and when a power exercisable by the President has not yet been exercised would be defeatist. I would like to hope and believe that Kulbhushan Yadav will not be executed to the very last moment, because things like that have happened. I want to just remind our viewers, your viewers, of a letter that Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, who was nothing, she was just a private individual, but an individual who had friends in Pakistan and who was known all over the subcontinent for what she had done in the world of culture. She wrote to the then President of Pakistan about two graziers, goat herds, who had crossed into Pakistan and were there going to spend their entire life in prison, or may even have been killed. She wrote to them on the basis of a newspaper report that she would like the President to release them. And he did. On the basis of her letter, the President of Pakistan released those two goat herds. That was news at that time. I'm talking of the early 80s. Today, the situation is far worse. The prospects are grim. But we should not rule out the operation of enlightened wisdom even in the darkest hour. This is a matter of life and death, an individual's life, his right to life.
Right, you're saying there's still hope now. How do you really see this playing out? We've seen some very tough talk today from both sides. How do you see this playing out? What advice really, if any, for the Prime Minister?
I think the government of India has reacted in the only way in which it could have reacted, which is with a sense of outrage. And the opposition has asked the government to do all that it can. The government has to spell out its outrage, its sense of anguish and its deep concern in the way in which it has. But I think it is for the government to speak in a variety of emotions, ranging from anger, protest to anxiety. But for civil society, the options are even wider. Civil society can appeal to the human instincts of the people of Pakistan, who can in turn exercise influence on the political and military apparatus in Pakistan. I think our options are much greater. इसीलिए मैंने इंसानियत की बात करी है और इंसाफ की. Not just about politics, not just about how this was likely to be a proxy war, which it is going to be perhaps, but on a much larger scale. I think this is a question of a very serious human crisis.
Okay. One last question. In the past also, you warned against warmongering. Inevitable, really. We've seen in recent years, each time tension has escalated. Most recently after Uri, this is what we expect. What do you believe makes this war psychology so prevalent today?
The iron of war has entered our soul. This is a phrase which I learnt or heard from Mr. Jaswant Singh, the former Minister for External Affairs. He was speaking about Sri Lanka. But I am applying the same phrase to India and Pakistan. The iron of war has entered our soul. And it is very important for those who are interested in the future of our civilization, our subcontinental civilization, to take that iron out of our soul, to exorcise our soul of its iron, its lead, and its poison.
Thanks very much, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. How will this story play out? Well, it really is anyone's guess, but thanks very much for your time. Chief Parthasarathi, let me get you in. We've seen some very tough talk. We've heard the Foreign Minister say, be prepared to face the consequences. Does this kind of tough talk, you believe, is what is needed at this moment to try, as we try and get ourselves out of this, try and get Jadhav out of this?
I've heard Gopal Gandhi's eloquence in appealing to humanity, but I belong to the realist school. What is the situation in Pakistan now? The army dominates. The Prime Minister is facing a trial and the army chief is in touch with Imran Khan. So, the really army calls the shots. Now, on this trial, something very interesting has happened. The army chose this court-martial under the Army Act and not the Terrorism Act which the Pakistan Parliament passed recently. Under the Army Act, there is a system of, you can have a death sentence, but there are systems of appeal. So, there will be an appeal to an appellate tribunal despite what the army chief has said. And finally, the decision rests with the President of Pakistan. Now, coming to the situation as it exists, and the power equations which exist, much as Gopal may speak about humanity and its love and how wonderful that is with the President, the reality is different. Right now, the President of Pakistan, though he is supposed to act on the advice of the Prime Minister, will act ultimately on the advice of the army. The fact of the matter is that in the past, I mean, I've handled such cases on a number of occasions. It drags on, but the person is ultimately released or he dies in jail in Pakistan. So, right now, one important thing also is the German intervention, and the Germans won't do it unless they're on wavelength with the Americans and Western powers, to say that Kulbhushan Yadav was captured by the Taliban and taken across the border from Iran. So, that is an important international factor in our favor.
Okay.
So, I think what will happen is these appeals will take place. It will be sat upon.
Drag on,
it will drag on for quite some time, and it depends on how we play it. I'm reasonably certain that we also have our leverages with people in our custody, And as a realist, I think it will be.
And we have used that. We said that
we have used it in the past, and it has worked.
Right.
And after all, in diplomacy, it is give and take and the realities of power.
Right.
So that's it.
Okay. Manishankar Rayar, sir, you were this evening at a do for Khurshid Kasuri. Now, he spoke earlier to journalists and talked about people on both sides, a fair section, he said, still want peace. Do you believe that given what is happening all around us, is that still possible? We heard Gopal Gandhi say that what we need is a miracle. Do you believe that that is still possible? Can we still save Jadhav?
I certainly endorse the entirety of the presentation of Gopal Gandhi. I agree with every word that he said. In our meeting today, there were passionate appeals made to the High Commissioner of Pakistan, who was sitting there, and to my friend Khurshid Kasuri, who is a member of the opposition and has nothing to do with either the apprehension, detention, prosecution or sentencing of Kulbhushan Yadav, that they should repatriate Kulbhushan Yadav to India. And I believe that that might constitute a tiny little contribution to the voice that we have heard from Parliament and from the government asking the Pakistanis to not proceed with this. And I think Parthasarathi is right in pointing out that there is an appeals process in the act under which Kulbhushan Yadav has been tried, and finally there are clemency powers with the President, and I would hope that whatever happens in the future, that Kulbhushan Yadav is not hanged or shot, and that he is, as soon as possible, returned to India.
Diplomatically, diplomatically and politically, what more can India do? We talked, Ms. Parthasarathi talked about some leverages that India has, but what more can we do?
Well, there are two, three things. Firstly, when we talk of Pakistan, let's not forget that we are talking about a country that has had no hesitation in executing its own leader. So there are limits. I agree with what everyone has said, that you know, they are appealing to Pakistan, to the finer sentiments, if any, and it's all based on hope. But in reality, I think what we will see happening is our government reaching out to the Pakistani authorities and explaining to them, you know, what the one is, as they said, the consequences could be. The second is trying to appeal to them to get send back Jadhav and have a conversation. But the Pakistanis, in my view, will hang firm on trying to get us to discuss all issues, like Basit explained earlier, whether it's Siri Creek, whether it's Siachen, everything, and not just Jadhav. I think that is where our diplomacy will really have to play a role. But at the same time, having said that, let me just say that I think what we are witnessing today is something far worse than the manner in which we are discussing. It's not just a question of Jadhav being picked up. What it does do is open up message that any Indian can be picked up from anywhere. And that is something we have to guard against and take steps against.
In fact, I was sort of going to ask you, Mr. Parthasarathi, on just that could this, you know, while you're saying that in your experience, these things perhaps go into some sort of a freeze, and then, you know, the appeals process carries on, and either the individual unfortunately dies in jail or is released at some time. But, you know, given the tough talk that we're seeing, given we're seeing a brazen Pakistan here, you know, who's violating every, like I said, you know, diplomatic norm, do you really see them going back?
Look,
or is that just sort of positioning?
I personally, on my analysis, see this Pakistan Army chief more restrained verbally, but then he is guided by his institution, which hates India. I mean, let's have no illusions about that. They haven't forgotten the past. So it is going to be a delicate diplomatic exercise, but we should pursue it strongly. We have carrot, we have stick, and we have leverages. And diplomacy consists of using those leverages and doing it imaginatively. But let us not, and I do not see, and I am sure Jadhav would agree with me, that the government is going to agree to linking this to any preconditions which the Pakistanis will put. This will be dealt with as a standalone issue, but we will use the leverages we have, which may now be known, which may not be known now. A lot of this in this sort of activities takes place in a very grey area.
Absolutely.
And
fair enough.
Which we
can't really play out in public.
Which we really can't even, it's not appropriate to discuss it even in public. Because let me put it, it's not out of milk of human kindness, but baser in human instincts which determine that. And you're dealing with a professional army. If I was dealing with Nawaz Sharif, yes, but the man is finished.
Right.
I mean, he's a zero, and therefore
which
you're
is
dealing
quite
with
apparent because they are saying that he wasn't even informed about this and they went ahead without him knowing.
Army, and I'm glad Mani has with Khurshid Kasuri. He's a wonderful gentleman who's always been well disposed. But I have to deal with the reality.
Right.
The reality of power is the army.
Okay. GVL Rao, come in here. The point that Mr. Parthasarathi is making, that we're not going to be treating this now with, with any give or take that Pakistan perhaps would want us to get involved with. This is a standalone case. The only demand that India is now going to have is that you need to release Kulbhushan Jadhav. Would that be a fair assessment to make?
I think, you see, Pakistan is already feeling cornered, possibly for the last, ever since the SAARC summit, where the entire region boycotted Pakistan. I think increasingly Pakistan as a terror state has been acknowledged by the whole world.
Except
and
if I'm sorry, I just need to...
I think to somehow try and provoke us.
I'll let you finish. I just wanted to say, but there's no proof of that in their actions, at least. In this one case, they've been pretty brazen about this, and we can't seem to be getting across at all. In fact, they're insisting that all they've done is follow law.
No, this is a charade. I think we have called the bluff of Pakistan, how their own claims have been negated by the Iranian ambassador to Pakistan, how this was negated by the German ambassador to Pakistan, how Pakistan itself was not able to really put out any facts substantiating the lies that they have been trying to pervade. And there was no discussion about this so-called trial, and suddenly they come up with a conviction. So this is a charade, this is a farce. To my mind, this is an attempt possibly to somehow try and provoke